The diplomatic vessel Harmony's edge drifted silently through space, its hull gleaming with the colors of 100 different worlds. Inside the main conference room, Ambassador Zextera of the Villani Consortium sat at his workstation, his forearms moving gracefully across multiple data screens. His purple skin showed the slight color changes that indicated deep concentration, a trait common to his species when dealing with complex problems. Today's problem was humanity. Zextera had been a diplomat for over 300 years. He had successfully negotiated peace treaties between war-loving species, trade agreements with isolationist cultures, and integration protocols for dozens of new civilizations joining the Galactic Council. He prided himself on understanding the basic nature of any species within hours of first contact. But humans confused him completely. The data files floating before him showed image after image of human delegates, explorers, and diplomats. Every single one carried weapons. Not just one weapon, but multiple weapons. Some carried obvious ones like the plasma weapons that most species use for defense. But they also carried knives, strange multi-tools backup weapons, and devices that the galactic database couldn't even identify. Zextera's aide, a young Thylorian named Keptar, approached with the latest intelligence reports. Ambassador, the human delegation will arrive within the hour. Their ship has been scanned and cleared through security. How many weapons did the scans detect? Zextera asked, not looking up from his files. Keptar's antenna twitched nervously. The scanner stopped counting at 400 individual items that could be classified as weapons or tools capable of violence. That's from a crew of only 20 humans. Zextera's skin shifted to a deeper purple, indicating his growing concern. 20 weapons per person? Are they planning to start a war during the diplomatic meetings? The humans insist all weapons are for personal protection and utility purposes only, Keptar replied. Their captain specifically requested that we not ask them to disarm, as it would violate what they call their basic rights. The ambassador stood and walked to a large viewing port that looked out into space. In the distance, he could see the approaching human vessel. It was smaller than most diplomatic ships, but it bristled with what appeared to be defensive weapons. Even their supposedly peaceful exploration ship looked ready for battle. Have you read their cultural files? Zextera asked his aide. Yes, sir. Very confusing. They list their planet as a garden world suitable for life, but their history is filled with constant warfare, natural disasters, and survival challenges. Most species that develop on such harsh worlds either become extremely peaceful to avoid destruction, or they destroy themselves before achieving space travel. Zextera nodded. This was exactly what puzzled him. Humans had somehow managed to develop advanced technology and space travel while maintaining what appeared to be a warrior culture. Every other species in the galaxy had to choose between advancement and aggression. Humans seemed to have both. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the human vessel. A tall man with short brown hair and calm eyes appeared on screen. He wore what appeared to be a formal uniform, but Zextera could clearly see at least 3 weapons attached to his belt. Greetings, the human said with a slight smile. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. We're honored to be invited to these integration talks. Welcome, Captain Morrison, Zextera replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. I am Ambassador Zextera. We look forward to learning more about your species and your intentions regarding membership in the Galactic Council. We're excited to meet everyone, Morrison said. My team is looking forward to the cultural exchange activities. We brought gifts from Earth and examples of human art and technology to share. As Morrison spoke, other humans moved in the background of the transmission. Zextera counted at least 6 more weapons visible on the various crew members. A woman with blonde hair who appeared to be adjusting navigation controls wore what looked like a combat knife and 2 smaller weapons. A man working at an engineering station had tools that could clearly be used as weapons hanging from his work belt. We'll dock in 15 minutes, Morrison continued. Is there anything special we need to know about the docking procedures? Standard protocols apply, Zextera said. Though I must ask, are the weapons your crew carries necessary for this diplomatic mission? Morrison looked genuinely confused by the question. He glanced around at his crew, then back at the screen. Weapons? Oh, you mean our personal equipment. These are just standard gear. Is there a problem? No problem, Zextaros said quickly. We simply want to ensure all delegates feel safe and comfortable during the meetings. That's very thoughtful, Morrison replied. We'll see you soon. The transmission ended, and Zextaros turned to his aide. Did you notice his confusion when I asked about weapons? Yes, sir. He acted as if carrying multiple weapons was completely normal. Zextaros' skin color shifted to a lighter shade, indicating growing curiosity rather than concern. Prepare the welcoming committee, and make sure security is aware that our guests are well equipped. 20 minutes later, the human delegation entered the main reception hall. Captain Morrison led the group, flanked by 5 other humans. The woman Zextaros had seen on screen was introduced as Lieutenant Katie Barnes, cultural liaison. The others were Engineer Sam Phillips, Navigator Lisa Rodriguez, Security Chief Rick Taylor, and Communications Officer Ben Carter. Each human carried visible weapons, tools, and equipment that could serve multiple purposes. What struck Zextaros most was how relaxed and friendly they seemed despite being heavily armed. They smiled, shook hands with the various alien delegates, and showed genuine interest in learning about other cultures. This is incredible, Lieutenant Barnes said as she examined the crystalline architecture of the reception hall. The way the light refracts through these structures is beautiful. Is this a traditional Villani design? Zextaros found himself warming to humans despite his confusion about their weapons. Yes, the crystal formations represent the harmony of different elements working together, much like the species in our galactic community. That's a wonderful metaphor, Morrison said. We're hoping to find that same harmony. Earth has much to offer, and we're eager to learn from more advanced civilizations. As the evening progressed, Zextaros watched the humans interact with delegates from dozens of different species. They were polite, curious, and genuinely interested in building relationships. They asked thoughtful questions about different cultures and shared stories about life on Earth. But they never once explained why they carried so many weapons. The question burned in Zextaros' mind as he prepared for sleep that night. Tomorrow would bring the formal discussions about Earth's integration into the Galactic Council. He had dealt with warrior species before, but they were usually direct about their violent nature. Humans seemed to combine the equipment of warriors with the behavior of diplomats. Perhaps tomorrow he would find the courage to ask the question that had been bothering him all day. After all, understanding the true nature of a species was essential for successful integration into the galactic community. And right now, humans were the most confusing species he had ever encountered. The formal reception hall buzzed with conversation as delegates from 37 different species mingled before the evening's cultural presentations. Zextaros moved through the crowd, observing how different species interacted with the new human delegation. Most seemed fascinated by the humans' friendly demeanor, though he noticed several delegates keeping a careful distance. The humans, meanwhile, appeared completely at ease. Captain Morrison stood near the refreshment table, engaged in animated conversation with Ambassador Thylex of the Crystalline Consortium about mining techniques on different world types. His casual stance and warm smile gave no indication that he was carrying enough weapons to outfit a small security team. Lieutenant Barnes had drawn a crowd of younger delegates who were fascinated by her descriptions of Earth's diverse ecosystems. As she gestured enthusiastically while describing rainforests, the light caught the edge of what appeared to be at least 2 knives and some kind of energy weapon attached to her belt. Engineer Phillips was examining the ship's environmental systems with several technical specialists, using tools from his belt to demonstrate human engineering approaches. Each tool he produced could clearly serve as a weapon in the wrong hands, yet he handled them with the casual familiarity of someone reaching for a pen. The contradiction was driving Zextaros to distraction. Ambassador, a voice said behind him. Zextaros turned to see Consul Marthek of the Peaceful Alliance, one of the galaxy's most pacifist species. Have you observed the human weapon situation? It's hard to miss, Zextaros replied. I've never seen anything like it. Marthek's pale blue skin showed nervous color fluctuations. My security advisor counted at least 40 individual weapons among their 6 delegates. That's more firepower than most military escorts carry. Yet they seem genuinely peaceful, Zextaros observed. They've been nothing but courteous and friendly since arriving. Perhaps it's a cultural display, suggested Consul Vextari of the Hive Worlds, who had joined their conversation. Some species use weapons as status symbols rather than tools of violence. But these appear to be functional weapons, Marthek pointed out, and they're carrying them in a diplomatic setting. It's either a threat or what? Zextera asked. Marthek's skin color shifted to indicate confusion. I honestly don't know. In 300 years of diplomacy, I've never encountered anything like this. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Secretary Chun of the Trade Federation, who approached with obvious concern. Ambassadors, we need to discuss the human situation. My analysis team has completed their assessment of the human delegation's equipment, and Zextera prompted. Each human carries between 6 and 8 individual weapons, plus tools that could be adapted for combat use. But here's the strange part. They also carry medical supplies, emergency rations, communication devices, and what appears to be survival gear. Survival gear? Consul Vextari asked. Why would they need survival equipment on a diplomatic vessel? Secretary Chen's expression grew more puzzled. That's exactly what my team wanted to know. When we asked their cultural liaison about it, she seemed confused by the question. She said they always carry basic survival equipment, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Zextera's curiosity finally overcame his diplomatic training. The question that had been burning in his mind all day could wait no longer. He excused himself from the group and walked directly toward Captain Morrison. Captain Morrison, Zextera said, interrupting the mining discussion. Might I have a word with you privately? Of course, Ambassador, Morrison replied with a smile. Though I should mention, anything you want to discuss with me can be discussed in front of my team. We don't have many secrets. Several other humans had gathered around, including Lieutenant Barnes, Engineer Phillips, and Security Chief Taylor. Each was armed with multiple weapons, yet they all looked at Zextera with friendly, open expressions. Very well, Zextera said, steeling himself. I hope you won't take offense at a direct question, but I must ask, why do you carry so many weapons? The question seemed to hang in the air. Conversations around them gradually stopped as other delegates realized something significant was happening. The humans looked at each other with expressions of genuine confusion. Weapons? Morrison asked, looking down at his belt as if seeing it for the first time. You mean our equipment? Yes, Zextera said. Each of you carries what appears to be multiple weapons, far more than any other species brings to diplomatic meetings. We're trying to understand if this represents a threat, a cultural practice, or something else entirely. Lieutenant Barnes stepped forward, her face showing sincere bewilderment. I'm sorry, but I don't think I understand the question. These aren't weapons, they're tools. Well, some of them could be used as weapons if necessary, but that's not their primary purpose. That knife on your belt, Zextera pointed out. What is its primary purpose, if not as a weapon? Barnes looked down at the knife as if she'd forgotten it was there. It's a utility knife. I use it to cut things, open packages, strip wire insulation, prepare food, mark measurements on materials, dozens of things every day. But it could be used to harm someone, Zextera pressed. Well, yes, Barnes admitted, but so could my fork at dinner or my coffee cup, or really any solid object if someone wanted to use it that way. Just because something can be used as a weapon doesn't make it a weapon. Engineer Phillips nodded in agreement. My multi-tool has 17 different functions. Yes, the blade could hurt someone, but I use it mainly for mechanical work. The pliers, screwdrivers, wire cutters, and measuring tools are what I actually need every day. Security Chief Taylor, a large man with callous hands, spoke up. With respect, Ambassador, I'm confused about why this is confusing. Don't your people carry tools for daily tasks? We have specialized tools for specific jobs, Zextera replied. But we don't carry multiple cutting implements and energy weapons to diplomatic meetings. Energy weapons? Morrison looked genuinely surprised. You mean these? He gestured to what Zextera had identified as weapons on his belt. These are emergency power cells, a portable communicator, and a medical scanner. I suppose the power cells could be rigged to discharge dangerously, but they're designed to power equipment. The circle of observing delegates had grown larger. Zextara could see representatives from dozens of species watching this exchange with fascination. Some looked concerned, others curious, but all seemed as puzzled as he was. "Let me ask a different question," Zextara said. "Do you consider yourselves a violent species?" "Violent?" Lieutenant Barnes looked shocked. "No, of course not. We're here for peaceful integration into your galactic community." "Then why?" Zextara asked, his frustration beginning to show. "Does every single one of you carry equipment that could be used to kill someone?" The humans exchanged glances again. Captain Morrison rubbed his chin thoughtfully before responding. "Ambassador, I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding here. We don't carry these things because we're planning to hurt anyone. We carry them because we might need them for any number of situations that could arise." "What situations would require weapons on a diplomatic vessel?" Zextara asked. "Not weapons," Morrison corrected gently. "Tools. And as for situations..." He paused, looking around at the other humans. "Well, what if there's an emergency? What if someone gets hurt and needs medical attention? What if there's a mechanical failure and we need to help with repairs? What if we get separated from the group and need to find our way back? What if the food replicators break down and we need to prepare emergency rations?" Barnes added, "What if there's a hull breach and we need to seal it quickly?" Phillips contributed, "What if someone gets trapped and we need to cut them free?" Taylor said. Zextara stared at them. "You carry all this equipment because you're preparing for emergencies that might never happen?" "Exactly," Morrison said with a smile, as if Zextara had finally understood something obvious. "It's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it." The ambassador's skin shifted through several colors as he processed this information. Around them, the other delegates murmured among themselves in dozens of languages, clearly as confused as he was. "But," Zextara said slowly, "most species rely on ship's equipment and emergency services for such situations. And what if those systems fail?" Barnes asked, "What if help doesn't come in time? What if you're the only one who can help someone in an emergency?" The simple questions hit Zextara like physical blows. In his 300 years of diplomacy, he had never encountered a species that automatically assumed they might need to be self-sufficient in emergency situations. Most civilized species had developed past the need for individual preparedness. "I think," Morrison said gently, "we might need to have a longer conversation about this. Would you like to learn more about human culture and why we approach things the way we do?" Zextara nodded, realizing that his understanding of humanity was about to be completely challenged. The next morning, Zextara found himself in the ship's main library with Dr. Amanda Foster, the human expeditions historian. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes, but like all the humans, she wore a belt containing several tools that could double as weapons. She had offered to help him understand human history and culture after witnessing his confused questioning the night before. "I appreciate you taking the time to explain," Zextara said as they settled into comfortable chairs surrounded by holographic displays. "I must admit, your species presents some unique challenges for a diplomat." Dr. Foster smiled warmly. "I understand the confusion. Humans often puzzle other species when we first meet them. We've had similar experiences with some of the cultures we've encountered in our own exploration. Tell me about your world," Zextara requested. "Your files list Earth as a garden world suitable for life, but your people behave as if they're from a much harsher environment." Dr. Foster activated the displays, showing images of Earth from space. It was indeed beautiful, with blue oceans, white clouds, and green continents that indicated abundant life. "Earth is beautiful," she agreed, "but beauty can be deceiving. Let me show you what daily life was like for humans throughout most of our history." The display changed to show various scenes from Earth's past. Zextara watched in growing amazement as Dr. Foster explained what he was seeing. "These are some of the predators our ancestors dealt with," she said. Images flashed by showing massive bears, pack-hunting wolves, big cats with enormous teeth, and creatures that looked designed purely for killing. Humans didn't evolve as apex predators. We were prey animals for most of our development. "Prey animals?" Zextara's skin shifted to show surprise. but your physical capabilities suggest otherwise. We developed our capabilities because we had to, Dr. Foster explained. Unlike most species that evolved on safer worlds, humans had to become adaptable to survive. Look at these natural disasters. The display now showed volcanic eruptions, massive storms, earthquakes that split the ground open, floods that covered entire regions, and fires that consumed forests. Zextera had never seen such violent natural phenomena. These events happen regularly on Earth, Dr. Foster continued. Not once in 1,000 years, but constantly. Somewhere on Earth, there's always a natural disaster happening. Humans learn to expect the unexpected because on our world, the unexpected could kill you. Zextera studied the images with growing understanding. So humans developed a habit of carrying survival tools because your environment required it. Exactly, but it goes deeper than that. Dr. Foster brought up new images showing human settlements throughout history. Look at these early human communities. What do you notice? Zextera examined the images carefully. They all appeared to be fortified. Walls, barriers, defensive positions. Right, because humans didn't just have to worry about natural disasters and predators. We also had to worry about other humans. The display showed scenes of warfare throughout human history. For most of our development, resources were scarce and competition was fierce. Groups of humans often fought each other for territory, food, water, and materials. The ambassador's skin color indicated deep thought. Most species that develop under such conditions either destroy themselves or become extremely peaceful to avoid mutual annihilation. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times, Dr. Foster admitted. But we also developed something else. We learned that the best way to avoid being a victim was to be prepared for anything. She activated a new series of displays showing human technological development. Look how our technology developed compared to other species. Most civilizations focus on either military technology or civilian technology. Humans developed both simultaneously because we never knew which we'd need. Zextera studied the progression of human technology. Their medical advances were impressive, their communication systems were elegant, and their transportation was efficient. But everything also had secondary applications for survival or defense. Your medical scanners can be used as sensors for finding people in emergencies, he observed. Yes, our communication devices can serve as emergency beacons. Our tools can be adapted for construction, repair, or defense as needed. Everything serves multiple purposes because space and weight have always been limited for humans. But surely once you developed advanced civilization, these habits would fade, Zextera said. Dr. Foster shook her head. They became more refined, but they never disappeared. Let me show you something from just 50 years ago on Earth. The display showed news footage from various human cities. Zextera watched scenes of natural disasters, accidents, infrastructure failures, and emergency situations. This is Hurricane Maria hitting the Caribbean islands, Dr. Foster explained. The storm destroyed most infrastructure. People were without power, water, or communication for months. But the communities that survived best were the ones where individuals had prepared for emergencies. Another scene showed an earthquake in a major city. This earthquake knocked out emergency services for days. Regular citizens with medical training, tools, and supplies were the ones who saved the most lives while waiting for professional help to arrive. You're saying that individual preparedness remained necessary even in advanced civilization? Zextera asked. Absolutely. In fact, it became more important. Advanced systems are wonderful when they work, but they can fail in ways that leave people completely helpless. Humans learn never to put all their trust in any single system. Dr. Foster brought up more recent images showing human space exploration. When we started traveling to other worlds, we encountered new challenges. Equipment failures, hostile environments, unexpected situations. The humans who survived were the ones who carried backup equipment, redundant systems, and tools that could be adapted for multiple uses. Zextera began to understand. So when Captain Morrison carries multiple tools and backup systems, he's not preparing for war. He's preparing for the possibility that primary systems might fail. Exactly. And when Lieutenant Barnes carries a knife, she's not planning to hurt anyone. She's planning to be able to cut herself free if she gets trapped or help someone else who needs assistance, or handle any of a dozen emergency situations that might arise. The ambassador's skin showed thoughtful colors. But doesn't this suggest a lack of trust in your fellow beings? Most civilized species rely on community support and professional services. We do trust our fellow beings, Dr. Foster said. But we also understand that sometimes help can't reach you in time, or the people who want to help might not have the right tools or training. Taking responsibility for your own preparedness isn't a lack of trust in others. It's taking pressure off others. She showed him images of human emergency responders. Our professional rescue teams love working with people who are prepared. It means they can focus on the most serious problems instead of dealing with preventable issues. I'm beginning to see, Zextera said slowly. Humans view individual preparedness as a civic responsibility. Yes, if I can take care of myself in an emergency, then emergency services can focus on people who truly need help. If I have the tools and training to help others, then I can reduce the overall burden on society. Dr. Foster activated one final display showing modern human settlements on various worlds. Look at our recent colonies. Everyone carries personal equipment not because they expect trouble, but because when trouble comes, and it always comes eventually, they want to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Zextera studied the images thoughtfully. Human colonies did seem remarkably resilient compared to other species settlements. When problems arose, individuals immediately began working on solutions rather than waiting for help from authorities. There's something else, Dr. Foster added. Humans have a saying, an armed society is a polite society. When everyone is capable of defending themselves, people tend to treat each other with more respect. You mean the weapons serve as a deterrent to bad behavior? Not exactly weapons, she corrected. Capability. When everyone knows that everyone else is prepared and capable, it changes social dynamics. People are more likely to cooperate, and less likely to try to take advantage of others. Zextera's mind raced with new understanding. So humans carry tools not because they're aggressive, but because preparedness is woven into your culture at the deepest level. Right. We're not paranoid. We're realistic. Bad things happen sometimes, and when they do, we want to be ready to handle them ourselves and help others do the same. The ambassador sat back in his chair, processing everything he'd learned. Dr. Foster, I believe I owe your people an apology. I misunderstood your nature completely. No apology needed, she said kindly. Most species go through the same confusion when they first meet us. We understand that our approach to life seems strange to people who developed on safer worlds. One more question, Zextera said. Don't you ever worry that all this individual capability might lead to chaos or violence? Dr. Foster considered the question carefully. Actually, the opposite tend to happen. When people know they're capable of defending themselves, they're more confident and less likely to overreact to perceived threats. When people have the tools to solve problems, they're less likely to panic when problems arise. Individual preparedness actually makes society more stable, not less. As Zextera left the library that day, he realized his entire understanding of humanity had been transformed. They weren't a warrior species pretending to be peaceful. They were a prepared species who had learned that being ready for trouble was the best way to maintain peace. The next day, Zextera found himself in the ship's advanced holographic training facility with Security Chief Rick Taylor and several other delegates who had expressed interest in understanding human preparedness culture. Despite everything Dr. Foster had explained, the ambassador still struggled to believe that Earth was truly more dangerous than other worlds. With respect to Dr. Foster's presentation, Consul Marthak said, many worlds have natural disasters and predators. What makes Earth so different that it requires such extreme individual preparedness? Chief Taylor, a stocky man with kind eyes and scarred hands, nodded understandingly. That's a fair question. Dr. Foster gave you the historical perspective, but sometimes it's easier to understand by experiencing it. Would you like me to show you some basic scenarios that humans consider normal parts of life? You mean simulations? Asked Secretary Chun, who had joined the group out of curiosity. Exactly. The computer can create accurate holographic representations of typical Earth environments and situations. Nothing dangerous, just enough to give you an idea of what humans deal with regularly. Zextera found himself genuinely curious. What kind of scenarios? Let's start with something simple, Taylor said, activating the holographic controls. A basic camping trip. Humans do this for recreation. The room transformed into a realistic forest environment. Tall trees surrounded them. Sunlight filtered through leaves, and the sound of birds filled the air. It looked peaceful and beautiful. "This is lovely," Consul Vextari commented. "Very relaxing." "It can be," Taylor agreed. "But let me show you why humans don't go into places like this unprepared." Suddenly, a massive brown bear appeared from behind a tree, standing nearly 3 meters tall on its hind legs. Several delegates jumped backward in alarm. "This is a grizzly bear," Taylor explained calmly. "They're common in many earth forests. This one is just curious about the camp, but they can weigh up to 400 kilograms and run faster than most humans. They're not usually aggressive, but they're dangerous if surprised or if they smell food." The bear simulation sniffed around their campsite, then wandered away. Taylor continued the demonstration. "Weather changes quickly in Earth's wilderness," he said. As he spoke, dark clouds gathered overhead. Within minutes, rain began falling, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Hypothermia can kill humans in just a few hours if they get wet and cold. Thunder crashed overhead, and lightning illuminated the forest. Lightning strikes kill about 400 people per year on Earth. Floods from sudden rain can trap people in low areas. As if on cue, water began rising around their campsite. The peaceful stream nearby turned into a rushing torrent. "And then there are the smaller dangers," Taylor said. The simulation showed various snakes, spiders, and insects. Some of these creatures carry diseases. Others have venom that can kill within hours. Many are nearly impossible to see until you accidentally disturb them. Ambassador Zextera watched a spider the size of his palm crawl past his foot. "Humans go into these environments for fun?" "Millions of humans go camping every year," Taylor confirmed. "But they prepare first. We bring proper clothing for weather changes, food stores to avoid attracting bears, first aid supplies for injuries, navigation tools in case we get lost, emergency communication devices, and yes, tools that could be used for defense if absolutely necessary." The forest simulation faded, replaced by a city scene. Now let's look at urban environments, where most humans spend their time. The holographic city looked modern and safe, with clean streets and well-maintained buildings. Delegates walked around, examining the peaceful urban setting. "This looks quite civilized," Secretary Chin observed. "It is, most of the time," Taylor agreed, "but cities have their own challenges." Suddenly, the ground began shaking violently. Buildings swayed, windows shattered, and cracks appeared in the street. The earthquake simulation was so realistic that several delegates instinctively grabbed onto nearby structures for support. Earthquakes happen without warning, Taylor explained as the shaking stopped. They can trap people in buildings, cut off utilities, and make roads impassable. Emergency services might not reach everyone for days. Before the delegates could fully recover, the simulation changed again. Sirens wailed as emergency vehicles raced through the streets. "This is a chemical plant accident," Taylor says, the air filled with a hazy, dangerous-looking cloud. "Industrial accidents require immediate evacuation. People need to know how to protect themselves and their families quickly." The scene shifted once more, showing a crowded public space during what appeared to be a normal day. Suddenly, panic broke out as people began running in all directions. This could be anything from a terrorist attack to a building fire to a medical emergency that started a panic, Taylor explained. In crowds, people can be injured by the crowd itself, even if the original danger isn't directly threatening them. Consul Marthek's pale skin showed signs of stress. "These seem like very rare situations." "Actually, they're not," Taylor said. "Let me show you some statistics." The holographic display changed to show data from Earth. In any given year on Earth, about 60,000 people die from natural disasters, 40,000 from traffic accidents, 30,000 from falls, 20,000 from poisoning, and thousands more from various other emergencies. The numbers continued scrolling by. About 400,000 people per year require emergency evacuation from their homes due to fires, floods, chemical spills, or other dangers. Millions more experience power outages, water system failures, or other infrastructure problems that require self-reliance. Zextaros studied the data with growing amazement. These numbers seem incredibly high compared to other worlds. That's the point, Taylor said. Earth is what your scientists classify as a high-energy world. More geological activity, more severe weather, more complex ecosystems, and more potential for things to go wrong. Secretary Chin looked puzzled. But if these situations are so common, wouldn't it be more efficient to have better emergency services rather than expecting individuals to be prepared? Taylor smiled. We have excellent emergency services, but let me show you the math. The display showed a typical Earth city with a population of 1 million people. This city has about 500 police officers, 300 firefighters, and 200 paramedics on duty at any given time. That's one emergency responder for every 1,000 citizens. That seems adequate, Consul Vextari said. For normal situations, yes. But watch what happens during a major emergency. The simulation showed an earthquake hitting the city. Immediately, thousands of emergency calls flooded the system. During the first hour after a major disaster, emergency services typically receive more calls than they can handle in a week. The display showed response time stretching from minutes to hours as services became overwhelmed. Even the best emergency services can't be everywhere at once. The people who survive best are the ones who can take care of themselves and help their neighbors during the crucial first hours. Taylor activated a new simulation showing the same earthquake, but this time focusing on neighborhoods where residents were prepared. Watch what happens when people have basic supplies, first aid training, and tools for self-rescue. The prepared neighborhoods responded much differently. People quickly checked on neighbors, provided first aid to the injured, turned off gas lines to prevent fires, and organized search efforts for trapped individuals. The burden on emergency services was dramatically reduced because citizens were handling many situations themselves. This is remarkable, Zextaros said. Individual preparedness actually makes the entire system work better. Exactly, Taylor confirmed. When everyone can handle basic emergencies, professional responders can focus on the most serious situations. It's not about not trusting the system. It's about making the system more effective. Consul Marthek still looks skeptical, but surely modern technology has reduced these risks. Taylor activated one more simulation. Modern technology is wonderful, but it creates new vulnerabilities too. The display showed a cyber attack shutting down power grids, a solar storm interfering with satellites, and a supply chain disruption leaving stores empty. Modern systems are efficient but fragile. When they can fail completely and suddenly. The more complex and interconnected our systems become, Taylor explained, the more important it is for individuals to maintain some basic capabilities. Not because we expect systems to fail, but because we understand that all systems have limits. As the simulations ended, the delegates stood in thoughtful silence. Finally, Ambassador Zextaros spoke. Chief Taylor, I believe I understand now. When humans carry multiple tools and backup systems, you're not being paranoid. You're being realistic about the world you live in. That's right, Taylor said. We hope we never need these tools for emergencies. But if an emergency does happen, we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Secretary Chin nodded slowly. And because emergencies are relatively common on Earth, individual preparedness became a cultural value. Yes, and when we started exploring space, we found that other worlds could be just as unpredictable as Earth. So we maintained the habits that had served us well. Zextaros' skin showed colors of deep respect. Your species has turned survival into an art form. Taylor chuckled. We prefer to think of it as turning survival into a responsibility. Everyone deserves to go home safe at the end of the day. Individual preparedness helps make that possible. As they left the training facility, Zextaros realized that what he had initially seen as excessive armament was actually evidence of humanity's most admirable trait, their refusal to be helpless victims of circumstance. More text appeared. 2 is 1, 1 is none. This means that if you have only one of something critical, you effectively have 0, because that one item might fail when you need it most. So we carry backups for important things. Zextera studied the sayings with growing interest. These aren't just practical rules. They're philosophical principles. Exactly. Here's another one. New text appeared. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. We're not pessimists, Ben continued. We genuinely hope everything will go smoothly, but we also prepare for the possibility that it won't. This lets us stay optimistic while being realistic. But doesn't this create a tremendous burden? Zextera asked. Always carrying extra equipment, always planning for problems that probably won't happen? Ben shook his head. That's where you might be misunderstanding the psychology. For humans, being prepared doesn't create stress. It reduces stress. He gestured to his various tools and devices. When I know I have backup communication devices, I don't worry about my primary communicator failing. When I know I have tools that can handle multiple situations, I don't stress about unexpected problems. Preparedness creates peace of mind. I hadn't considered that, Zextera admitted. Let me show you how this applies to children, Ben said, activating new images. Human children learn this mindset very early. The display showed young humans packing for school. Each child carried what appeared to be excessive supplies. Look at this school bag, Ben pointed out. The child has 3 pencils, 2 pens, backup paper, extra erasers, a small first aid kit, emergency snacks, and spare clothes. That seems like far more than necessary for a day at school, Zextera observed. But look what happens when problems arise. Ben said. The display showed various school scenarios. A child's pencil breaking during an important test, someone getting hurt and needing first aid supplies, a classmate forgetting their lunch, or unexpected weather requiring different clothes. The prepared children don't just solve their own problems. They help solve problems for others too. The child with extra pencils shares with classmates. The one with first aid supplies helps injured friends. The one with emergency snacks feeds hungry classmates. Zextera's skin showed growing understanding. So individual preparedness becomes community preparedness. Right, and it creates positive social dynamics. The prepared children become natural leaders because others know they can be counted on in difficult situations. Ben activated another display showing human emergency responders. This continues into adult professions. Look at our firefighters, police officers, and medical personnel. The display showed the extensive equipment carried by human emergency workers. Each individual carried enough tools and supplies to handle a wide variety of situations independently. Compare this to emergency responders from other species. Ben said. New images showed alien emergency workers carrying much more specialized, limited equipment. Your emergency responders seem to require specific tools for specific jobs, Zextera observed. And support teams and backup systems and coordinated responses, Ben agreed, which works fine when everything goes according to plan. But emergencies rarely go according to plan. The display showed a comparison between human and alien emergency responses. When faced with unexpected complications, alien responders often had to wait for additional resources or specialized personnel. Human responders adapted their existing tools to handle new challenges. Individual preparedness makes our people more adaptable, Ben explained. When every person can handle multiple types of problems with the tools they already carry, the entire team becomes more flexible and effective. Zextera leaned back in his chair. You're describing a completely different way of thinking about individual capability and social responsibility. Yes, most species seem to think that individual preparedness and community cooperation are opposites, that preparing for yourself means not trusting others, Ben said. Humans learn they're actually complementary. The more prepared each individual is, the stronger the community becomes. He showed a final set of images depicting human space colonies. Look at our settlements on other worlds. Every colonist carries personal equipment, tools, and supplies, not because they don't trust their neighbors, but because they want to contribute to community's overall resilience. When emergencies happen, and they always do eventually, the communities with the most prepared individuals recover fastest and lose the fewest lives. Ben put away his display and looked directly at Zextera. Ambassador, I think the key difference is this. Most species developed systems to protect individuals from uncertainty. Humans developed individuals who could handle uncertainty. Both approaches work, but they create very different cultures. And when humans carry multiple tools and backup systems, Zextera began. We're not trying to intimidate anyone or prepare for war, Ben finished. We're trying to be the kind of people our communities can count on when things go wrong. Because things do go wrong sometimes, and when they do, we want to be part of the solution. Zextera's skin displayed deep purple, indicating profound thought. This explains so much about human behavior that puzzled me. You're not aggressive. You're responsible. That's probably the best summary anyone's given, Ben said with a smile. We carry tools not because we're looking for trouble, but because we're prepared to handle trouble if it finds us. As their conversation wound down, Zextera realized that human preparedness wasn't about fear or aggression. It was about taking responsibility for their own capabilities, so they could better serve their communities. It was, he thought, perhaps the most admirable philosophy he'd encountered in all his years of diplomacy. Later that evening, Zextera found himself in the ship's observation lounge with communications officer Ben Rodriguez. The young human had volunteered to help explain what he called the philosophy behind human preparedness after overhearing the ambassadors continue questions about human equipment practices. I appreciate your patience with all my questions, Zextera said as they settled into comfortable chairs overlooking the stars. Your species continues to surprise me. Ben smiled and adjusted his position, causing the various tools on his belt to shift. Even in this casual setting, he carried what appeared to be at least 6 different items that could serve multiple purposes. No problem at all, Ambassador. I think the confusion is pretty natural. Most species we've met have had similar reactions when they first see how we equip ourselves. Dr. Foster explained your history, and Chief Taylor showed me the environmental challenges. Zextera said, but I'm still struggling to understand the thinking behind it all. How does a species develop such an ingrained habit of carrying backup equipment for everything? Ben leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. Let me ask you something first. When you left your quarters this morning, what did you bring with you? Zextera considered the question. My diplomatic credentials, a communication device issued by the ship, and my personal data pad. That's it? What if your communication device failed? I would use ship's communication systems, or ask someone else to contact whoever I needed to reach. Ben nodded. And if the ship's systems were down? Then it would be an emergency, and emergency protocols would be activated. Right. You have trust that the systems will work, and that if they don't, someone else will handle the problem. Ben's tone wasn't critical, just observational. Humans think differently. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small device. This is my primary communicator. But I also carry this backup unit, and this emergency beacon, and my personal data pad has communication capabilities too. For communication devices? Zextera asked. Different devices for different situations? Ben explained. The primary communicator works great for normal ship-to-ship communications. The backup uses a different power source and frequency range in case the primary fails. The emergency beacon works on standard galactic emergency frequencies and has a much longer battery life. And my data pad can connect to various networks if the other systems are unavailable. Zextera's skin showed puzzle colors. But what are the odds that you need all 4? Probably very low, Ben admitted. But here's the thing. When you do need them, you really need them, and the cost of carrying extras is minimal compared to the cost of being unable to communicate when it matters. He pulled out another device. This is a multi-tool. It has 17 different functions. Now, I could carry 17 separate tools, each optimized for one specific job. But that would be heavy, bulky, and inefficient. Or I could carry nothing and hope that whatever tools I need will be available when I need them. Most species choose the latter approach, Zextera observed. And most species haven't spent millions of years learning that tools aren't always available when you need them, Ben replied. Humans learned early that it's better to carry one tool that can do many jobs and hope someone else has the right tool at the right time. Ben activated a holographic display, showing various human sayings and proverbs. Let me show you how deep this thinking goes in human culture. Text appeared in the air. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. This is probably the most fundamental human philosophy about preparedness, Ben explained. It means the regret of carrying something you don't use is much smaller than the regret of needing something you don't have. The cultural exchange dinner was proceeding smoothly when the ship's lights suddenly flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, casting everything in a dim red glow. A low humming sound that had been barely noticeable stopped completely, leaving an unsettling silence. Zextera looked around the dining hall as delegates from various species began murmuring nervously. The humans, he noticed, had immediately stopped eating and were quietly checking their equipment. "Attention all passengers," came a voice over the ship's communication system. "We are experiencing a temporary power fluctuation. Please remain calm while our engineering teams investigate the issue." Most of the alien delegates continued their conversations, accepting the announcement as routine. Ship malfunctions happen occasionally, and there were always qualified professionals to handle such problems. The humans, however, were already moving. Captain Morrison had pulled out a small device and was scanning the air around them. Lieutenant Barnes was checking what appeared to be an atmospheric monitor. Engineer Phillips had produced some kind of testing equipment and was examining the wall panels near their table. "Is there a problem?" Zextera asked, approaching the human delegation. "Probably not," Morrison replied, though his attention remained focused on his scanner. But the power didn't just flicker. It went out completely for several seconds before emergency power activated. That suggests a more serious issue than a simple fluctuation. "Atmospheric readings are normal," Barnes reported quietly. "No dangerous gases. Oxygen level stable." Phillips looked up from his examination of the wall panel. "I'm reading some unusual electromagnetic signatures. This might not be a simple power problem." As if summoned by his words, the ship's communication system crackled to life again. This time, the voice sounded more urgent. "All passengers, please report to designated emergency stations. We are experiencing a cascade failure in our primary systems. This is not a drill." Immediately, the dining hall erupted in controlled chaos. Alien delegates looked around uncertainly, waiting for ship's crew to provide guidance. The announcement had mentioned emergency stations, but most passengers weren't familiar with emergency procedures. The humans, however, had already organized themselves. "Kitty, check the emergency lighting and backup power systems," Morrison said calmly. "Sam, see if you can access ship's engineering systems and figure out what's actually failing. Ben, try to establish communication with other parts of the ship." Medic Helen Carter, who Zextera hadn't noticed before, was already moving to the crowd with what appeared to be medical scanning equipment. "Captain, I'm reading elevated stress indicators from several delegates. Some species aren't handling the emergency well. Can you help them?" Morrison asked, already on it. Carter approached a group of crystalline beings whose normally steady light patterns were fluctuating wildly with panic. She spoke to them calmly while using her scanner to monitor their condition. Zextera watched in fascination as the humans transformed from dinner guests into an organized emergency response team. Each person had specific equipment for their role, and they moved with practiced efficiency. "Ambassador," Lieutenant Barnes called out, "your species has environmental sensitivities, right? My atmospheric monitor shows some unusual readings. You might want to move to a more stable area." She was right. Zextera could feel the ship's atmospheric processors struggling, and his breathing was becoming more difficult. But he hadn't even noticed the problem until she pointed it out. "How did you detect that?" he asked. "Standard emergency monitoring," she replied, helping him toward a section of the dining hall where the air quality was better. Different species have different environmental needs. In an emergency, those needs become critical. Meanwhile, Engineer Phillips had somehow gained access to a maintenance panel in the wall. "Captain, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is this isn't a catastrophic system failure. The bad news is it's a cascade failure that's going to keep getting worse unless someone stops it manually. Can ship's engineering handle it?" Morrison asked. "Maybe, if they can reach the right sections. But the failure is affecting transportation systems too. They might not be able to get to the critical repair points in time." Communications Officer Rodriguez looked up from his equipment. "I've established contact with the bridge. They're asking for volunteers with technical experience to assist with repairs. Ship's crew is spread too thin. Morrison nodded. Sam, take Ben and see what you can do to help. Katie, stay here and coordinate passenger assistance. Helen, continue monitoring medical situations. What about you, Captain? Barnes asked. I'm going to see if there are any other areas where passengers need help. Zextera watched this exchange with growing amazement. The humans hadn't asked for permission to help, hadn't waited for official instructions, and hadn't hesitated to volunteer for potentially dangerous work. They had simply identified problems and started solving them. Shouldn't you wait for ship's crew to direct emergency operations? Zextera asked Morrison. Ship's crew is busy with critical systems, Morrison replied. We can handle passenger coordination and minor repairs. That frees them up to focus on keeping life support running and preventing the cascade failure from reaching critical systems. As if to emphasize his point, another group of alien delegates near the far side of the dining hall began showing signs of distress. Without being asked, Carter immediately headed in their direction with her medical equipment. But what if you make things worse? Zextera pressed. Morrison paused and looked at him seriously. Ambassador, in any emergency, there are really only two kinds of people. Those who help solve the problem and those who become part of the problem. We'd rather risk making a mistake while trying to help than do nothing and let others handle everything. Phillips and Rodriguez had already left to assist with engineering repairs. Barnes was organizing other passengers, helping them move to safer areas and keeping them informed about the situation. Carter was providing medical assistance to delegates whose biology wasn't handling the emergency well. This is remarkable, said Secretary Chun, who had been watching the human response with obvious interest. Your people automatically assume responsibility for emergency situations. Not assume responsibility, Morrison corrected. Accept responsibility. There's a difference. We're not trying to take charge or tell others what to do. We're just trying to contribute our capabilities to solving the overall problem. Another announcement came over the communication system. Repair teams report significant progress. Estimated time to full system restoration is now 40 minutes instead of 3 hours. We thank the volunteer technical specialists for their invaluable assistance. Zextera realized that Phillips and Rodriguez had already made a significant difference in resolving the crisis. How do you know what to do? He asked Morrison. This isn't your ship. You're not familiar with these systems, and you haven't trained for this specific emergency. Morrison smiled. We don't know exactly what to do, but we know how to figure it out. Sam has experience with power systems and engineering. Ben understands communication networks. Helen knows medicine. Katie is good at organizing people. I'm decent at coordinating overall responses. But the specific technical details, we adapt. Most emergency situations follow similar patterns, even if the specific details are different. Power fails, people get scared, communications break down. Someone gets hurt. The exact cause doesn't matter as much as the response. As if to demonstrate his point, Carter returned from treating the distressed delegates. Captain, I've stabilized the Zyran delegation. Their respiratory systems were being affected by the atmospheric changes. I've moved them to a section with better air circulation and given them supplemental oxygen. You carry oxygen supplies to dinner? Zextera asked. I carry basic medical supplies everywhere, Carter replied matter-of-factly. Different species, different potential medical needs. In an emergency, I might be the only medical person available. The ship's lights flickered again, then stabilized at a brighter level. The normal humming of the ship's systems gradually returned. Attention all passengers, came the announcement. Primary systems have been restored. The emergency is over. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank everyone for their cooperation. As the dining hall returned to normal lighting, Zextera looked around at the various delegates. Most appeared relieved but passive, having waited for the ship's crew to handle the situation. The humans, however, were methodically checking their equipment and discussing what they had learned from the experience. That went well, Morrison said calmly, as if managing shipboard emergencies was a routine part of diplomatic dinner conversation. Well, Zextera asked, the ship nearly had a catastrophic system failure, but it didn't Barnes pointed out. The problems were identified quickly, repairs were made efficiently, and nobody was seriously hurt. That's a successful outcome. Phillips and Rodriguez returned, looking slightly tired but satisfied. Interesting cascade failure pattern, Phillips reported, started in the power distribution network and spread to secondary systems. Ship's engineers were excellent work with very professional crew. Were you able to help? Morrison asked. Some. Mostly we provided extra hands and alternative perspectives, different engineering backgrounds, sometimes spot things that others miss. Rodriguez nodded. Their communication systems use different protocols than ours, but the basic principles are the same. We helped them reroute around the damaged sections. Zexteros stared at them. You sound like you enjoyed it. Well, Phillips said with a grin, it was more interesting than dinner conversation about trade regulations. As the evening continued, Zexteros found himself thinking about what he had witnessed. The humans hadn't taken over the emergency response or pushed others aside. They had simply identified ways to help and started helping. Their individual preparedness had made them valuable contributors to solving a crisis that affected everyone. More importantly, they had expected to be useful in an emergency, not hoped to be useful or wanted to be useful, but expected to be. They carried tools and supplies not just for their own protection, but so they could help others when problems arose. Captain Morrison, Zexteros said as the dinner finally concluded, I believe I'm beginning to understand why your species carries so much equipment. Oh, what's your conclusion? You carry tools not because you're planning for trouble, but because you're planning to be helpful when trouble finds someone. Morrison smiled. That's probably the most accurate description anyone's given. We carry these things because sometimes people need help, and we want to be the kind of people who can provide that help. As Zexteros returned to his quarters that night, he realized that what he had initially seen as excessive armament was actually evidence of humanity's most admirable quality, their determination to never be useless in a crisis. 8 that evening, after most of the other delegates had retired for the night, Zexteros found himself alone with Captain Morrison in the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the transparent walls, and the gentle hum of the ship's systems provided a peaceful backdrop to their conversation. The events of the dinner emergency had left Zexteros with more questions than answers. He understood now that humans were prepared and helpful, but something deeper still puzzled him about their fundamental approach to life. Captain, Zexteros said carefully, may I ask you a personal question? Morrison, who had been quietly checking one of his devices, looked up with a friendly expression. Of course, Ambassador. Ask whatever you'd like. When you carry all these tools and weapons, when you prepare for emergencies that might never happen, when you assume responsibility for problems that aren't officially your job, don't you ever get tired of it? Doesn't it feel like a burden? Morrison considered the question thoughtfully, setting down his device and giving Zexteros his full attention. That's an interesting way to look at it. You think being prepared is a burden? Well, yes, Zexteros replied. Most species develop systems and institutions to handle problems, so that individuals don't have to carry that responsibility. It seems like humans choose to carry burdens that they could delegate to others. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that Zexteros hadn't heard before. Let me tell you a story, Morrison said. When I was 12 years old, I went hiking with my family in the mountains near our home. It was supposed to be a simple day trip, well-marked trails, good weather, nothing dangerous. Zexteros settled back to listen, sensing that this story was important. About halfway through the hike, my younger sister Lisa slipped and fell down a steep slope. She broke her leg badly and couldn't walk. We were 3 hours from the nearest road, in terrain too rough for emergency vehicles to reach quickly. Morrison's expression grew distant as he remembered. My parents called for help, but the rescue team said it would take at least 6 hours to reach us with the equipment they needed to safely extract someone with a broken leg from that location. That seems like a reasonable response time for a difficult rescue, Zexteros observed. It was, but Lisa was in severe pain, going into shock, and losing blood from other injuries. 6 hours might have been too long. Morrison paused. My father had brought what most people consider excessive supplies for a simple day hike: medical kit, emergency shelter, extra food and water, survival tools, communication equipment. The same kind of over-preparation you practice now, Zexteron noted. Exactly. But because he was prepared, he could stabilize Lisa's injuries, keep her warm and hydrated, and set up a safe shelter while we waited for rescue. When the rescue team finally arrived, they said his treatment had probably saved her life. Morrison turned to look directly at Zexteron. That day, I learned something that changed how I think about preparedness. My father didn't carry all that equipment because he was planning for Lisa to get hurt. He carried it because he refused to be helpless if someone he cared about needed help. Zexteron's skin showed thoughtful colors. So it's not about planning for trouble. It's about refusing to accept helplessness. Right. Most species we met seem to accept that sometimes bad things happen, and there's nothing individuals can do about it. They build systems to handle problems and trust that help will come when needed. Morrison gestured toward the stars beyond the observation deck. Humans fundamentally reject that philosophy. We refuse to accept that we might be unable to help someone who needs it. Every tool I carry, every backup system, every redundant capability represents my refusal to be useless when it matters. The ambassador considered this carefully. But surely there must be situations where individual preparedness isn't enough, where the problem is too big for any one person to handle. Absolutely, Morrison agreed. But here's the thing. Even in those situations, prepared individuals can contribute more to the solution. During the emergency earlier tonight, I couldn't fix the ship's cascade failure by myself, but I could coordinate passenger assistance, freeing up the ship's crew to focus on critical repairs. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had been transformed for humanity's formal integration ceremony. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive space, their varied forms creating a spectacular display of galactic diversity. At the center of it all, Ambassador Zexteron stood at the primary podium, preparing to present his recommendation to the Council. The human delegation sat in the designated area for prospective members, looking remarkably calm despite the historic nature of the moment. Captain Morrison and his team maintained their usual quiet confidence, each still carrying the tools and equipment that had initially caused so much confusion among the galactic diplomatic community. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Zexteron began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. I stand before you today to present the results of our evaluation of humanity's application for membership in our galactic community. A subtle murmur passed through the assembled delegates. Many had heard rumors about the human weapon situation and were curious about how it would be addressed. When I first encountered humans, Zexteron continued, I was deeply concerned by what appeared to be their excessive armament. Every human delegate carried multiple weapons, far more than any species we had previously encountered in diplomatic settings. I fear we were dealing with a warrior culture that might threaten galactic peace. He paused, allowing his words to settle before continuing. I was wrong. The murmur in the hall grew louder. Several delegates leaned forward with interest. Over the past week, I have had the privilege of learning about human culture, history, and philosophy. What I initially mistook for weapons are actually tools. What I feared was aggression is actually preparedness. What I thought was a threat to our community is actually one of humanity's greatest strengths. Zexteron activated a holographic display that showed images from his time with the human delegation. Humans evolved on what we classify as a high-energy world, where natural disasters, predators, and environmental challenges were constant threats. Unlike most species, which developed either peaceful cooperation or aggressive dominance, humans developed something unique: individual preparedness combined with community responsibility. The display showed scenes from the ship's recent emergency, with humans immediately organizing to help solve problems, while other delegates waited for professional assistance. When our ship experienced a cascade system failure 3 days ago, I witnessed something remarkable. While most delegates waited for official help, the humans immediately began contributing their skills and equipment to solve the crisis. They did not take charge, they did not push others aside, and they did not seek recognition. They simply identified problems and started fixing them. Secretary Chin of the Trade Federation, stood to address the assembly. Ambassador Zextera, are you recommending that we accept a species that refuses to disarm in diplomatic settings? Secretary Chun, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding I had to overcome, Zextera replied. Humans do not refuse to disarm. They refuse to be helpless. Every tool they carry serves multiple purposes, and their primary purpose is to enable humans to help others when problems arise. The senior counselor called for the formal vote. One by one, species representatives indicated their position on humanity's membership application. To Zextera's satisfaction, the vote was overwhelmingly positive. The Galactic Council formally welcomes humanity as our newest member species, the senior counselor announced. May your preparedness strengthen our collective resilience, and may your philosophy of individual responsibility inspire continued cooperation among all our peoples. As the ceremony concluded with traditional celebrations, Zextera approached the human delegation. Captain Morrison extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship, which the ambassador gladly accepted. Congratulations, Captain. Your species has much to contribute to our community. Thank you, Ambassador. We're honored to be here and excited about the opportunities for cooperation and learning. As the celebrations continued around them, Zextera found himself thinking about his own preparedness. For 300 years, he had relied on ship systems, professional services, and institutional support. It had never occurred to him that he might be more useful to others if he maintained some individual capabilities. Captain Morrison, he said quietly, I have an unusual request. What can I do for you, Ambassador? Would you help me select some basic tools and equipment for my personal use? I find myself inspired by your philosophy of preparedness. Morrison smiled warmly. I'd be honored to help, but may I ask what changed your mind? Zextera considered the question as he watched the diverse species of the galactic community celebrating together. You taught me that carrying tools is not about planning to fight. It is about planning to be useful, and I would like to be more useful to my community. That's the best reason anyone could have, Morrison replied. We'll start with basics, tools that serve multiple purposes and help you contribute when others need assistance. As they walked toward the human delegation's quarters to examine their equipment, Zextera realized that his understanding of strength, community, and responsibility had been fundamentally changed. Humans had shown him that individual preparedness was not selfish. It was the ultimate expression of commitment to others' welfare. Later that evening, as Zextera began his diplomatic log entry, he found himself writing words that captured the essence of what he had learned. Humans do not carry weapons because they are planning to fight. They carry tools because they are planning to win, not against enemies, but against helplessness, against suffering, against the random cruelties that the universe sometimes inflicts on good people. They refuse to be bystanders when others need help, and they prepare themselves to be contributors rather than burdens when communities face challenges. He paused in his writing, thinking about the implications of humanity's philosophy for the entire galactic community. Perhaps the question should not be why humans carry so many tools, but why the rest of us carry so few. Individual preparedness in service of collective welfare may be humanity's greatest gift to our galactic civilization. As Zextera sealed his report and prepared for transmission to the diplomatic archives, he reflected on how completely his understanding had changed. A week ago, he had seen humans as potentially dangerous. Now, he understood that they were potentially invaluable. The small multi-tool that Captain Morrison had given him sat on his desk, gleaming in the soft light of his quarters. It was a simple device with multiple functions, much like the human philosophy it represented, practical, versatile, and designed to help solve problems rather than create them. Tomorrow, he would begin learning how to use it properly. After all, if he was going to work alongside humans in building a better galactic community, he wanted to be prepared to contribute when the opportunity arose. Because now he understood that being prepared was not about fear of the future. It was about hope for the chance to help make that future better for everyone.